if it doesn't work. And they're like, well, that's really hard, needs a new integration development environment, needs new integration testing. And so their first release, not to my satisfaction, went along, and when they got to where they were going to start pulling it together, the number of defects they found rose incredibly, exponentially. And they went through heroic efforts to get it down again to a shippable level. They were still 2 months late with it. A couple of people were hospitalized in the effort from overwork, stress, things like that. When it was shipped, it was panned in the press. The customers abandoned it in droves, stayed with the old release. So the next sprint, they decided they would have integration of all the different teams work every sprint. And this often caused continuous integration between all the teams. A lot of work to do. But the number of defects never rose very high. There was never any unexpected undone work that had to be done. And as a consequence, they were able to get done with all the work and have it shippable before the intended release date, and they spent the time going back, extra time going back and remediating some of the stuff from the first release. Now, it seems like that's an incredibly overhead thing to do, to really test and make sure it all works, but the consequence of not doing it is not good. This is often what we find at the end of our code complete. Not a place where you would like to live. And if we don't have time to really pretty it up, like Design Studio and stuff like that, this is what our customers get to inhabit and occupy. So Martin Fowler, he lives about 2 towns over from me, and tends to be one of my worst critics. He really likes architecture, so he can afford to just say, yeah, what are you going to do about that? And so he laid us a challenge. He said, so, you have uncovered this problem. Yes, you intended for Scrum to be a framework and for the excellence or inadequacy of people's practices to show so they can fix them, but it is a mess. It stands every chance of being a fad rather than something people use to improve their practices and improve the art of software development. He said, so what are you going to do about it? And of course, I said, nothing. That's not my problem. And then a couple of nights went by, and no matter how much I drank, it still was haunting me. Turns out alcohol isn't a complete answer to all the things that nag you. So I took on a number of initiatives over the last year. Pretty radical things. I tend to do more radical things than not. And these are the initiatives I took on. I started a number of programs that were not necessarily my specialty. I'm an operating systems architect by trade, so I know software development, but I partnered with a number of companies to develop what's called a Scrum Developer Program, where like Microsoft and people with skills in Java and Eclipse developed programs to teach developers how to build software using modern engineering practices on a modern integrated development environment, or ALM, within an iteration. And so, this program is intended to help people who don't know how understand how to work in that environment as a cross-functional, self-organizing team. So that was one thing. Another thing is went back into the Scrum Master program, which clearly was not doing what we intended, and remediated and came up with a new program. Went into, and I'm working on right now, solving the issue of when we first started Scrum, I intended for it to be totally open source. So everything was just given. And one of the things I started was the Scrum Alliance to be a community organization to support everyone. And unfortunately, across time, they've captured a number of trademarks and certification marks, and it's become more of a cartel than a community organization. So I'm removing those use of those certifications marks. We're also going to start putting in open assessments. That is assessments anyone can take. You don't have to take a course to take the assessment. And if you have adequate skills, you get a certification. So no longer does sitting in a course and looking marginally alert Also, you don't have to pay for a course to be certified. If you know what you're doing, you can prove it. Nice technique. Kind of like college. Wow. Also, we were having a tremendous problem with the quality of the training. Trainers of Scrum, some were excellent, some were poor, and these assessments would allow us then to start looking at not only how well the people were doing in learning things and have the people understand what Scrum was, but also give us a way of monitoring the quality of some of the trainings of the people. Like if you were running a number of training sessions and your people in general, when they took the assessment, averaged 20%, it's suggestive that there's a problem. You know, not really indicative, but you know. The other problem was I wanted to have a transparent organization where the things that were being done were fully understood and explained. And I also wanted to this is something that surprised me. As I traveled around, I found that the people who were trainers in Scrum Alliance were viewed as privileged and wearing ermine robes. And this was like shocking because, you know, their intention and their value was they had spread Scrum hugely throughout the world. But because it became a restricted group, those who weren't part of it viewed them as almost like royalty or entitled nobility. And this is not a good thing. We don't need people jealous or you know, regretting or ruining others within our profession. We have enough hard work to do without setting up privileged castes and elites. So of these initiatives, I formed an organization to do it called scrum.org. Jeff Sutherland's working with me on this. He and I are also forming an organization called Scrum Foundation. Pretty soon there will be tons of Scrum things, right? You won't be able to tell one from another, which is good because the real work is up to you. And what we're going to be doing in the Scrum org is, one, maintaining the definition of Scrum. It's very, very small. The use of it is incredibly flexible and variable, but it's small, so we created a Scrum body of knowledge, which is all of 22 pages long, and we intend to maintain it and keep it, you know, common so everyone understands what it is and how to use it. So I go to an organization, I say, so how's your daily Scrum coming, daily stand-up? They say, oh, we only have those once a week. I say, oh, so you're not playing chess, you're playing checkers. You know, different game, but nice game, but not the one we're talking about. We're looking at offering training on a number of areas within software development that Scrum causes to be transparent, not necessarily well, like the software developer program. And then we intend to put in, and already have in place, a number of assessments of knowledge where people can test their skills against various bodies of knowledge. So one of the things we do is we initiate training programs. For instance, with Microsoft, we organized a training program around their VS 2010, Visual Studio 2010, which trains people how to, using that tool set and modern engineering practices as a cross-functional team, build software within increments. And this is, of course, their expertise and the expertise of their MVPs and Inner Circle partners. So those are the people that develop the courseware with our support and are then delivering it. This is the Scrum Developer Program, and like I mentioned, its intention is to make it so people at least understand how to build an increment using modern practices. Number of times I'll walk into an organization and they'll say, well, QA didn't get done, that's why we didn't get done. And I'm like, QA, you know, they're part of the team. And did you use acceptance test-driven development? Do you know about this? And what's that? So this is intending to get modern practices and modern tooling out to the fore. The one that Microsoft did, and it's out in the marketplace now, they also built a Scrum process template for. In the past, they've had an Agile process template, which was good, but loose, you know. And the intention of Scrum is that the framework is, like the game of chess, fixed. So that then you can actually focus on the difficult parts, which is how well do we develop software. And this is really good that they have the Scrum process template, because this instantiates the body of knowledge in a template that you can use on their technology. That program they're offering is 5 days long. It's a very difficult program for a trainer to teach, because you're not only making sure that the technology is working, but you're working with people who are in teams, and you're teaching them not only Scrum and modern engineering practices and the technology, but you're teaching them how to work together as a team. So this requires a level of trainer which is not necessarily found on the street corner. This is team-based training. There's an assessment after it. You can take an assessment either after the course or on your own, and if you get 90%, you become certified. If you don't, sorry. You can study some more and try it again, but this is intended to be an actual benchmark. So the intention in this course is it has initiation where the teams are formed, overview of the course, overview of a case study, overview of the ALM that they're using, overview of Scrum, and then they start doing iterations, sprints within the course, usually 5 or 6. And this is shown here. And in each sprint, what they're doing is introducing part of the work that they want to do, teaching the people a little more about Scrum, teaching them more of the modern engineering practices, teaching them how to do those on that set of tooling, and then letting them loose for one iteration, usually 4 hours, and seeing how they do. And the things that we've been finding out so far they get down to the first sprint and they're like, yep, great, that was good. You said, can we see what you did? Did? Well, yeah, you were supposed to do something. Oh! So second sprint, then they actually have something a little more. We say, but, did you actually pull together your unit tests? Oh, we were supposed to, so this is amazing. I'm just stunned at the depth of improvement that we need. And this is good, though, because it's both improving on all these areas, dimensions, but it's also creating a uniformity so that when you get people working together, they don't spend the first 3 months quibbling about how they're going to do their testing. They have a more generic approach. You may be listening and detecting right there a great danger, because the moment you start recommending or promulgating a generic approach, it stands the chance of being viewed as a methodology, where your management will buy it, and then that's the way you should work, even though it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So this is something I've always tried to avoid in Scrum, and it's a very fine balancing line between teaching people how to do something and someone viewing that as the way you have to do it. And what we've always said in Scrum is it's self-organizing team, because the only people who really know what they're doing and how to deal with the problems are the people doing the work. And the moment you impose a template on top of them, if that inhibits them, we've done some bad things. So over the next couple of years, bear with us, and we'll hope that we do good rather than bad. We also assess knowledge. So we have training programs that we're instantiating. There's one for Scrum called the Professional Scrum Developer Program. It's for intermediate level use of Scrum, not basic. There's this Professional Scrum Developer. There's going to be one called Professional Scrum Product Owner. And each one of those is a training program based on a body of knowledge which has assessments against it. Assessments like questions, some true, false, some multiple choice, some, God forbid, essays, which have to be looked at and evaluated. So for every one of these, they have a body of knowledge and an assessment program, which can include certification with an adequate score. There is a Scrum body of knowledge out there, and this is at scrum.org. I think it's translated into 24 or 25 languages. And this is Jeff's and my definition of Scrum as it's merged across the time. It's trivial, 22 pages long. And because it's so trivial and it causes so much problem when you try to use it, it's free. No one could charge for that, right? With it is what we're developing is an ability based on the programs and based on the assessments is to maintain a personal radar graph of your skills in any number of dimensions. So this will be interesting. This is something that IEEE ACM have been working on for a number of years, and have shied away from because of the cries of protest. So this is at least arrogant to do. It's also probably going to create a